Okay, I'd like to welcome participants to the virtual planning board meeting of May 2nd. I'd like to take a call to order. Ms. Creighton.
Here.
Mr. Licio will not be joining us tonight. Ms. Foley.
Here.
Mr. Gilbert.
Present.
Mr. Olney.
I'm here.
And Ms. Tenney.
Here.
Thank you. Looks like we have a quorum. I'd like to remind all board members and guests to be recognized by the chair if they wish to speak, and this meeting's being recorded. Before we start, I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge the passage of the change of use bylaw in the LCD east of School Street. As you all are aware, we voted unanimously, and I would like to acknowledge the hard work the board has put in for this bylaw change. And I'd especially like to recognize Gary Gilbert and Sarah Creighton for their professional presentations at town meeting last week.
Thank you.
Okay, so as you know, this is kind of a working workshop meeting on recodification. At this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to a vice chair, Sarah Creighton, to discuss the agenda items on recodification.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thanks to anybody who's tuning in. This is our working session to talk about the zoning changes that we've been talking about for, I guess, over 2 years as a board, to try to make our zoning clearer, in compliance with state law, case law, and to delete redundancies and to just generally update things. So I'm going to share my screen. Gary, are you able to share your camera? I think that's the best practice if we can do that. Oops. Okay, can you see my, it says May 2nd? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I need somebody to, Chris or Ron, I guess, when people raise their hands or something, because I can't, when I share my screen, for some reason, I can't seem to see those. So,
Okay.
yeah, so I thought we'd start by saying where we are with all of the stuff we've been working on. This is just a summary. Sections 1 through 4, we voted to have those ready for public hearing. We just need to add in that language that if there's a discrepancy between the definitions and the body of the bylaw, the body of the bylaw prevails. I have a couple of updates on, we're not going to talk, I just want to run this through you, and then I have some updates that I know Mary asked about in an email, so hopefully that will cover that. Tonight, we're going to talk about section 6, section 12, which is administration. We've, with a couple of exceptions, I think we're ready for a public hearing. Adult entertainment, same thing. Senior housing. I'm going to share something about that in a minute. Non-conforming use. We did ask Mark Bobrowski to look at that. Any word from him on that, Sue?
I have not heard anything from Mr.
Okay.
Bobrowski.
All right. Residential cluster and ADUs we're going to talk about tonight. The general bylaws sections, again, I have a couple of details on that, but the Board of Selectmen is going to actually discuss that a little bit tonight in their meeting. And then we thought that the language about ministerial, the authorizing the town clerk or the board of the planning board to add to take ministerial changes that was in the warrant the other night was a good thing to add. So we'll figure out how to do that. You know, if numbers are wrong or that kind of stuff, we thought that was a good idea. I'm going to jump ahead. What we've done is to format things. I removed all the line numbers, removed the existing bylaw. It turns out that the town clerk was worried about that being confusing and what was the real bylaw, what was not. She didn't want people to be confused about what the existing bylaw was. I cleaned up the font in a lot of these, tried to make them all the same. And we were able to change that section 4 table of uses to a portrait orientation so that everything is lined. We don't have to turn just to make it easier to print and all the rest. The other thing I did is Chris and I went through them as we said we would. We added a couple of definitions. Residential conservation cluster, I just pulled that from our existing bylaw. Ledge was not specified, so we pulled a definition from someplace. I don't know where Chris got that. And then we cleaned up the language on home occupation. Previously, it had doctor's offices, and then it also regulated where there were signs. And so the definition had a bunch of regulations in it about signs. And so we simplified it to customary home occupations as shown here. And the reason I deleted doctor's offices is that in the use table, doctor's offices was called out as an allowed use separate from home occupation. So it was redundant. So that's in the definition section. Any questions on that? Sue? Because I can see yours.
I just wonder in the residential, if a residential conservation cluster could also allow no lots, as in, a condominium type townhouse, which wouldn't have lots. Should we allow for that in our definition?
Why don't we take that up when we talk about residential cluster? Can somebody make a
Sounds
note,
good.
talk that about?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mary, go ahead.
Our current bylaws do have a definition for ledge on under 6.16.2, so that's changed. I don't know if it's substantial,
Material,
but
sorry, is it a material difference?
there's more specifics in our current definition.
I'm happy to just use whatever our current definition is if people don't mind. We can just substitute that in. So does that make sense? We have consensus that we'll substitute the ledge definition in 6 point what?
Could you read it? If it's not too
Yeah,
long?
sorry. But what is the section, Mary?
6.16.2.
And it's in 15, yeah. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
That'd be great too.
Ledge means a boulder or rock formation, whether or not cracked or broken into contiguous pieces. One, which has a volume of 3 or more cubic yards, or 2, the removal of all or any part of which, in the opinion of the building inspector, or as proposed by the lot owner, normally would involve either blasting or hoe ramming. Such ledge is an exposed ledge if it is uncovered surface area is 50 or more square feet.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
So I think Chris and I looked at this, and maybe Gary too, and we did look back at that definition, and there we were trying to simplify with references to volumes and who was deciding whether it was a ledge, and so that was why we proposed this simplified definition.
So where are these definitions being discussed? I wasn't part of a discussion.
So at the so this is our discussion. These are we were allowed to make administrative changes, and I'm being very transparent about those changes. So this is our discussion. This is.
Oh, okay, because Laura said that she had been discussing with
Well, there was a draft
Gary.
We have a draft which is up for
which we're
discussion.
getting to in section 6. But so it makes sense to take definitions. We're trying to take definitions out of the body of the zoning. And the question before us this moment is, do we want to have a simplified definition of ledge, or do we want to have a more complex definition that is currently in the current bylaw? And I think the recommendation from Laura as a landscape architect, talking to Chris about section 6, is that it makes sense to have something simpler. I don't have a strong feeling about it.
So Laura, can you tell me the difference between the two definitions, what we would be gaining or losing, or is it neutral?
Sure, Mary, what I read of the previous definition is it leaves more open to interpretation, whether the building inspector determines it's a ledge. So you need building inspector input, whether it's something that you're going to take a hoe ram or another piece of equipment to, versus just more of a having less to do with the built environment and construction methods than just what is the sort of natural definition of a ledge, a more neutral definition of it, not getting into building technologies and so forth, is what I was proposing here.
So isn't the
Checking a couple
issue,
of dictionary definitions.
isn't
Sorry,
the
Sarah.
issue, I'm sorry, isn't the issue here is by leaving us with a more broad definition, we actually are more inclusive about across a number of these proposals, particularly in section 6, is that actually breadth gives us greater jurisdiction and greater opportunities for best practices. When you get super specific, then the bizarre exception, if you're removing it with something other than a hoe ram or blasting, then it's not ledge, for example. I mean, as an
Correct.
extreme. And so I think that the opportunity here is to be, to lead us to best practices, because when you're prescriptive, you sometimes have unintended consequences. And certainly I know in the construction industry, for example, we try to be prescriptive in certain things, but try to use best practices and performance-based standards, which are outcome driven rather than widget driven, checklist driven.
Right.
And that's, I think, what the goal of the proposed rewrite of section 6 from which this derived.
Yes, that's a good summary. Thank you.
So I think that I think we all tend to want to define everything extensively because it feels that we're being inclusive, but it turns out that best practices generally are based and not prescriptive. So
So does anybody object to keeping this current
Yes, sir.
shortened version of the
Do not.
definition?
No objection here.
okay.
My only follow-up question would be is if the, this says refers to contiguous boulder or rock formations, and if that encompasses what we have here, whereas it means a boulder or rock formation, whether or not cracked or broken into contiguous pieces. So I just want to make sure we are encompassing all ledge.
Yes, I think if you spend more time studying what a ledge is, it could certainly be cracked and broken and still qualify as a ledge. I don't think we need to state that. Again, it's, the more you say it includes this, you may risk out leaving, but not that. So I think we're trying to make a generally understood statement that it is contiguous and it can be either above ground or underground, visible or not. And it is, ground surface materials, boulder and rock formation. So it's a kind of rock, and it's not just a loose thing that you can knock aside, but it's contiguous, making it a larger piece of rock, qualifying it as a ledge.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay. So moving on, I added the LCD changes that were adopted on Monday to section 4's table and the notes. I just did that after Monday's meeting. So section 5 obviously had changes at Monday's meeting, but we do not have any section 5 changes proposed for the next town meeting. So that's not relevant to any of our drafts. Make sense? I realized also when we were going through this that the use table needed to be updated with some of our proposed changes. So the two that I found were relevant were senior housing and ADUs. So I added in the motion or the draft motion or the draft for the senior housing that we did approve, that I added in a section that said amend the zoning bylaws by adding a row to table 1 in section 4, which is our use table, to indicate, should say indicate, not indicates, senior housing as an allowed use in the following districts. And I listed them as opposed to saying all districts, so that it was easier to call that out in the public hearing. At the end of our last discussion of this, we had a very brief discussion about whether it should be allowed in the limited commercial district. And Chris and I talked about what our strategy should be there and thought that it would be a good thing to get input on in the public hearing, and therefore to leave it inclusive in advance of the public hearing, and then we can always pull it back. And it's easier to pull it back if it's, and clearer if they're listed, if they're all the districts are listed, just administratively easier. Make sense?
I would add that this is all the same motion, so that if you're allowing senior housing by special permit, you're also going to be making these changes to the table in the same motion. So
right. It was in the, that's why I called it in the senior housing.
Right.
And in the PDFs for the public, it's included in that. So as it is on our SharePoint. Similarly, we're going to talk about ADUs in a minute, so we're not going to evaluate this right here, but I wanted to let you know that administratively, did the same thing. Delete the accessory use number 7 from the table of uses. That accessory use says as part of an existing garage, stable, or other structure for an employee or an owner occupant. So currently we allow ADUs for that use. We would delete that, and that we would modify the use to a combination of yes and ZBA in those residential districts where ADUs are allowed, if this bylaw were to move forward. So this is part of that bylaw proposal. So we'll come back to that in a minute to evaluate, because we have not discussed this, but I wanted to let you know that in the material that's there on the SharePoint, this is there. The other thing in administration, yeah.
Sue has her hand.
Yep.
I just, back on the senior housing, I just wanted to know, should that say to indicate senior housing as an allowed use by special permit in the following district? Do you think that would maybe
probably
preclude some?
Yes, because it is by special permit, right?
Yes, always.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, so senior housing. So yes, it should say by special permit. Thank you. By special permit. In districts. Okay, good. I'll make that change. We had in section 12, the one that we approved, the powers that the ZBA was the primary special granting body, and we deleted that because that's not really accurate. And then we're going to talk a little bit tonight later about the special permit. We have a lot of special permit stuff in both section 12 and section 6. And so we have some thoughts about that. Mary, did you have some, question, comment?
Yeah, I had a comment on the senior housing. I wasn't able to attend that meeting. My question with having it in the LCD, where currently, obviously the LCD is only commercial, are you stipulating that it's just for, like assisted living and more of a medical senior housing as opposed to housing?
I think we have it as any of the senior housing options currently. So I think, like I said, we had a discussion briefly about whether or not it should be in the LCD. And I think it's my opinion that we can get input from the public on that and that question. So it hasn't been decided. This isn't, remember, all we're doing now is proposing things for the public hearing. We're not finalizing the articles for town meeting.
Understood, but is the planning board proposing housing in the LCD at this point for senior housing?
The answer is yes.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Alan,
Thank you, Sarah. When I looked at the agenda, it looked to me as though it would be helpful for me to attend this meeting. But the discussion you're having so far is at a level of detail, which I'm sure I will eventually need to understand, but as of tonight, I really don't.
Okay.
I'm happy to stay on if my presence or participation will be useful as the meeting goes on, but if you think not, then I'll sign off.
well, let's use the fact you're here and jump ahead. I think that's a good thing. Let me go ahead to, timeline, which I think is relevant to you, Alan.
Yep.
Just so you know, we have a regular meeting on the 9th, and we are currently scheduled to have a public hearing on the 17th and continue to the 18th if necessary. And potentially, we talked about having a second hearing on May 23rd. I'm thinking we may not need that now. The warrant closes on May 24th and it's still June 11th at 1 p.m. as still the town meeting date. Is that
That's correct. Although I've heard from at least one member of the Board of Selectmen that there's a lot of feedback from people who would rather be doing something else on a Saturday afternoon in June. So it's not up to me, it's up to the selectmen, but that may change.
okay?
Alan, do you know what's on beside the recodification items? Is there other town business?
There may be, I think they are talking about possibly putting on, but they haven't made a decision yet, the switch from a 7-member planning board to 5 members and appointed rather than elected. And I know, I'm sure they'll be consulting with you about that if they haven't already.
Alan,
There may be one or two other things that I don't recall off the top of my head, but certainly recodification will be the principal focus of the meeting. And if it switches from a Saturday afternoon to an evening, my guess is it'll probably take 2 evenings.
Isn't public dispatch supposed to be one of or location of dispatch?
No, public dispatch is a ballot question on the election.
Oh, okay,
It's not going to be at town meeting.
okay.
Thank heavens.
So I think that's the update for you right now, Alan. And
Okay, I
thank-
think I have all these dates in my calendar.
Okay.
But if you
I'll
wouldn't,
send them to you.
yeah, that would be great if you would do that.
Okay. Yep.
Well,
So-
the other thing I would just mention is Ron emailed me this afternoon asking if the screen would be available for presentation of the zoning amendments. And my answer is absolutely yes. Certainly, I would have no objection to that and would encourage it. 2 problems with that. One purely technical, which I think can be solved, and that is in order to do that, we would need to be able to switch the input for the screen between the planning board's presentation of zoning articles and the PowerPoint application that shows the voting. I think it's pretty easy to do that. I think it requires a piece of equipment the school doesn't have, but I think that our audio-visual guy who did the sound at the annual town meeting has a piece of equipment that will do that. The other concern, though, may be more difficult to resolve. When we were testing the system before the annual town meeting, it was very difficult to display much text on the screen. If we tried to put, for example, the whole motion in that was going to be voted on with each article, the text became so small that it would have been difficult to read from the back of the room. And if you're presenting zoning amendments that are much more extensive, that would be even more of a problem. I'm happy to try and find a way to do that and test it out. But if if the text is so small that people can't see it, it's just going to engender frustration rather than help.
Would there be monitors in the back of the room, or it's just the front screen?
The school does have monitors that are pretty widescreen, and our AV guy can supply more. So it would be possible to do that. We didn't experiment with those preparing for the annual because we didn't need to. But we can certainly test it out and see whether it can be done in a way that will work.
I thought a little bit about this, and it seems to me that a bulleted summary of each zoning change with a handout, obviously that's the comprehensive change, might be useful. And then the other way a screen might be useful is to handle amendments, if there are any. So I think we have to think a little bit about that beyond tonight. The other piece of this is that I have thought quite a bit about the order in which these need to be taken, because they're interdependent. And if one fails or succeeds, then they, they build on each other. So, if you don't pass the use table, then you don't amend it later.
Right. And I think I've thought about the floor amendment possibility too, and the difficulty of that is compounded because not only would you have to show the the proposed floor amendment on your presentation, it also requires creating the voting software basically is a PowerPoint with add-ons to it, and in order to deal with a floor amendment, the person running the voting app has to create a new slide in that PowerPoint on the spot. And it worked pretty well at the annual because the amendment that was proposed wasn't very extensive, but it takes some time to do that and it slows things down.
Yeah. But okay, well, anything else from Alan tonight?
No, but I'm happy to stay on if you think it would be useful for me to be on later.
I think we're dealing with trying to get these things ready for public hearing.
Okay, well, I just want to say thank you for all your hard work on this. It's very impressive what you've been able to do, and I congratulate you all for getting to consensus and votes on difficult issues. You've all worked very hard.
Thank you.
So thanks.
Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Okay.
I'll be back again soon, I'm sure.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to our, I mentioned this, I think I mentioned section 12. So we'll talk about this special permit and section 6 in a minute. Nope. The stormwater, we had talked about, we had voted, I believe, to move it to the general bylaws. Somehow all I had moved previously in the previous version of what we were moving to the general bylaws was just the standards section. And I checked with Sue and we moved the entire section that was in the zoning to the general bylaws draft, and identified delete that section of the zoning and reference and instead change it to a reference to the general bylaws. So now it would say that with special permit, you must also comply with the stormwater provisions of general bylaws. Oh, the other thing, just going back to special permit, the current draft has reference throughout to special permit section, whatever it is, 12.5, sometimes called 11.5, sometimes called 7.5. So I changed it, and I'm hoping that, and that's why it's yellow on any of these sections, to say special permit as detailed in this bylaw, so that it doesn't reference a particular section number So that way, if we change section numbers or some other thing happens, we're hopefully safe. So hopefully we'll get that. We'll be okay. Oops, sorry. So these are what we want to talk about tonight. And we never seem to get to ADUs. So I thought we would start with that. We never seem to get to section 6 either, but I think that I tried to summarize the issues that are in, so we can take them at a high level, and if we need to take the specific language, we can pull that up, but I'm trying to not scroll through mountains of text. The change from the existing, this is existing bylaw, is that the minimum lot size is the existing, it shouldn't say none, it should say as required by the district. You understand when I said none, I meant no premium lot size. Secondly, the proposed ADU allows by right up to 900 square feet with some certain conditions. The building inspector would oversee that. I think we've talked about all these. Up to 20 per year, excluding the existing. The new version has some specifics around the existing units that they need to be certified by the building inspector within the next 2 years. And that by special permit in RD1 and RD2, or if they're constructed that are not in compliance with the requirements that are called out. So I think some of those things are things were in response to our last discussion of this. Gary, do you want to add any other issues that you addressed? I'm happy to pull it up on the screen if that's helpful.
Well, the biggest thing is just, you said excluding existing, which really covers the whole thing of the moratorium. No, amnesty rather, the amnesty.
Right.
You said it in 2 words. We haven't really done much more tweaking that I recall. Chris may weigh in.
The parking.
No, that hasn't changed at all.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any changes, actually.
Oh yeah, one thing was, instead of having them refile every 5 years a complete new permit, we're asking just for an affidavit, a legal affidavit that they're still owner occupied, because you don't really need to do anything else. It's already built and has the smoke detectors it needs.
Right. So, and I recognize as we talk through this that there may not be agreement that this is the accessory dwelling units is that doing these changes are a good thing. We will take a vote tonight as to whether or not we move this forward to the public hearing in this form. So there may not be agreement that we should. So I'm happy, I recognize that. But so these are the changes that since the last time we talked about it. I think they've been out there for 2 weeks. I have not changed anything. Owner occupied, 20 units, no limit in the amount of permits for pre-existing ADUs if they obtain a permit. They have to have a written lease, and just some sort of housekeeping kinds of things, renewed every 5 years to reaffirm the owner occupancy. I think the section wrong. Yeah, that's correct. And then if there's a special permit, it's the ZBA. So, anybody want to take?
I'd like to make a motion that we bring the amended ADU language to the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, discussion. Mary, you have your hand up.
Thanks. I am compelled to reiterate what I have said every single time with the ADUs. We've never gathered the data. We have no idea. I mean, I think the town planner, the building inspector, and the assessor should easily be able to determine how many legal and illegal ADUs that we have. So absent that data, we're just kind of shooting darts saying we need to change this because we don't actually know why. I think that I don't think that our current bylaw is restrictive for people to build ADUs if they truly want to build it for, you know, what this proposes, the aging in place, downsizing, senior housing, things like that. So, you know, we haven't addressed the burden that this is going to place on the building inspector. It's exacerbating parking issues. It's reducing the buffer. It's obviously creating it by right. And so, you know, we've removed the 2 times the lot size required. The setback requirements are different. It removes the public hearing process. It becomes by right. It changed from 4 off-street parking spaces to 3. The owner occupied requirement went down to 6 months. You know, what's going to prevent both of these being rented out at the same time? I think that this needs a lot more review and data to say this is what is good for Manchester. I think especially in light of all the other potential changes going on with 40B, 40A, all the other potential zoning amendments. So I would be a big no in this form of pushing this through to public forum.
Fair enough. Can I, Sue, I know you have a comment, Sue. Well, go ahead.
It was a very simple comment. It just in regards to the lack of data. There's technical reasons why it's not easy to count them, mainly to do with how units are identified by the assessor. But I didn't want to really respond to that. What I wanted to say is that regardless of how many units are there, and it doesn't matter whether there are 5 units in town or if there are 500 units in town, what we know is that we don't have adequate housing. So the number that exists is really irrelevant. And this has been brought out by our last 2 housing production plans. And it's a long-standing, and it was called out in master plans before this. So this is a long-standing solution that just hasn't been applied. So I just want people to understand that it really doesn't matter how many units there are existing. We still know that there's a housing shortage. And this is a very a natural way to help address that in a minimal way, I think.
Okay, any other comments on the motion? Mary, do you have another comment?
Yeah, my only comment back to Sue is that, you know, unfortunately, the master plan and the housing production plan were done pre-COVID. They were done pre-40B. They were done pre-40A. So I think you know, we're not looking at the same scenarios. So I think that it's hard to fall back on, well, this isn't in the master plan. I think there's too many variables that have changed that should be addressed in a meaningful way.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, let's see, you'll take a roll call vote. Mary, I'll let you go first.
No.
Okay, Chris,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Gary,
Absolutely.
Ron,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. So the motion carries to move this forward to a public hearing. Oh, shoot, I wanted to raise one other issue on this. So sorry I thought I had it elsewhere. Sorry for this. Ugh. In the ADUs we currently have, here we go. We allow ADUs as part of an existing garage, stable, or other structure. And it's my opinion, I would like to see a motion for us to delete that accessory use. We have heard that from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And as part of this presentation, I don't think we have previously discussed this, but I would like to propose, I'd like to hear a motion, or I was wondering if anybody else agrees with me, and if so, if somebody would like to make a motion to delete the accessory use for employees of the owner occupant, family living quarters, or an employee.
Sure, I'll make a motion to delete accessory use number 7 on the condition that the accessory use
Right.
bylaw that we're proposing passes.
Yeah, I was thinking it's part of the package that we would put together. It would be part of the yes. Do I have a second? I'll second it if that's allowed to get on the table. Laura,
Thanks. I'm trying to understand the objection because I don't remember seeing this before. So, or this clause, not that we didn't discuss it, but is it the fact that it could be in a garage or a stable or other structure, or is it the employee part? Can you just explain for me?
I think that as I understand it, we've heard from Sarah Melish, is that this seems to be a very common way that people are kind of skirting around the special permit intent and getting it by right, as opposed to sort of going through what we're now trying to create is a more mainstream best practices ADU, and that this exemption essentially
I see.
has been widely used for almost every ADU, is what I'm
So
hearing.
it's kind of a loophole, but
It's
it's
kind
not
of a
about,
loophole,
yeah.
and that's what Sarah Melish has said. So
Okay.
that's at least what I've heard her say. And I think she has repeatedly come and said, this is what everybody comes and says. And we have no way of knowing that that's what, we don't ask them to, after they get their ADU, to certify ever again that it's a employee member or employee or a family member. And so you can say that it's for your mother and then immediately change it.
Yeah, it doesn't include your mother.
Yeah,
It's
your mother
only
can't-
for employees. It's not
right,
even
unless
family
you
members.
have to hire your
Oh,
mother.
yeah. You have to hire your mother,
Of
right?
course,
Can't be for your mother.
employee, yeah. Yeah,
Can't
gotta
be
hire
for your
them.
mom or
Yeah,
your dad.
okay. I thought maybe it was objecting to the garage or stable, and I.
No, I think it's
No.
the, it's
Okay.
kind of a loophole.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
okay, motion on the table. Thank you, Laura. Mary, do you have a comment on this motion, the motion to add that as part of what we just voted? That's what I'm hoping is the motion. Oh, you're muted.
Geez, I was unmuted and then I muted. So this is basically saying that ADUs cannot be, in reference, ADUs cannot be in detached structures, correct?
Correct.
And then how with, I guess the building inspector is the proposed record keeper, what happens to these existing units that then, get rented out or whatever?
Existing units that are currently ADUs would be exempt, just the way any existing use prior to its change in zoning on any use, correct, is grandfathered. Not ADUs, but ADUs or kennels or,
But I think with any of these that have gone through or should have, that went through the ZBA process, they usually have a stipulation that, once that employee or whatever it may be is no longer employed, then that structure is not allowed to be used for occupancy, right? So, okay, I guess it's just it's a loophole then.
Yeah, once somebody moves out who is an employee, there's no way to stop anyone from renting it to somebody else.
So now we would create a certification process where if their grandfathering was conditioned on having an employee there, one would think you would have to go back and certify it, no? maybe that might be,
Well, the building inspector wouldn't have this in his file of ADUs, so I guess it's just an administrative issue.
Yeah,
yes, you're right. Okay, so we have a motion. Any other discussion? All in favor? And then I guess I have to take a vote. Ron first. You go.
Yes, yes,
Mary,
We're voting strictly to remove this one section.
correct.
Yes.
From the, yes, linked it to the other that we just provided that the other portion passes. As Chris said. Okay, Chris,
yes,
Laura,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. Great, thank you. All right, let's talk about the residential conservation cluster. We boiled this down to the, let me just clarify one administrative thing. In the version for the last meeting, somehow the density bonus for additional affordability fell out of that draft. And so that's the only thing I added back in to this version for today. So that is what I did. And I think I marked it in the version for today. The affordability, the residential cluster issues seem to be, we currently have 5 acres and we're proposing, when I say none, I mean the lot size that is in the current, that is allowed in the, that is required in the district. A 10% of the units be deeded affordable, and then a maximum density bonus would be 20. And that 20% could be from, I guess, 2 of these 3 criteria: additional open space, additional affordability. So when I wrote this for last week and I said not in the current draft, so I fixed that. So scratch that. And other amenities in town. So if somebody's going to build a soccer field or something, and that's by special permit. And then, so let's talk about those first, and then we'll talk about the townhouse question, which came up in the review. So let's, Chris, you want to make a motion to accept the residential conservation cluster as the May 2nd version as written? Oh, you're on mute.
I move that we accept the RCC bylaw as of the May 2nd version.
Okay, thank you. Anybody? It's Ron, second. Do I have a second?
second,
Okay, thank you. Discussion. Excluding the issue of the townhouses, which I think we have to get to. Ron, go ahead.
yeah, on this affordability, what if it's like a 3 unit cluster? So we
Well, it
don't
wouldn't-
get any, it wouldn't account, right, for affordability.
That's right. It would not be enough for an affordable unit.
That might want to be
Okay.
specified with a minimum.
Minimum of 1.
I was thinking about that. I don't know, just a thought.
Well, I think the question is, what are we're trying to achieve a couple things here. One is affordability, but we're also trying to encourage these kinds of developments to reduce, pavement and other kinds of things. Do we want to, so I could go, the other question is we could get public input on that question. Either way, whichever way we come out on it tonight, we might want to call it out for public comment.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
So right now, there's not a minimum, it's simply a 10%. So it would really only apply to those that have 10 units or more. Is that how I think you could read it either way.
Actually, you round it up, so if it's 5 units or more, you get a bonus of 1 if it's
Except-
affordable.
All other things are rounded down. So we just, if we want it to be 5 or more, currently it's 6 or more, is our requirement for other types of development, which we know is not quite legal, but if we want to stay with that general, you just need to call it out, because in all other instances, for example, in the bonus, we're rounding down. So you don't get a bonus if you're a fraction of, you only get it only rounds up. So, and rounds down in those cases. So we just need to be clear.
You want to look at the exact language? I made note that I that I put the definition. I realized that there was a definition missing, so I inserted that in section 2, as I told you before. Let's go to the bonus question. The bonus question. So the density bonus is awarded to increase the number of units beyond the maximum number, an aggregate of 20%.
Oh, so this is computations will be round to the lowest number.
Yeah, because so I don't think that 10% is affordability is required.
Yeah, it is though.
It is required. We're not taking that out right now.
Only if you want a bonus. So I think we're looking at the wrong piece then.
Right.
Okay.
Let me look at the.
You want to look at the existing cluster language?
Not really. I want to.
No, that wasn't in there. It was in a separate one, wasn't it?
Yeah. See, I don't think we have a bonus.
Yeah, it's in there.
I think they get a bonus for it, but I don't know if it's required. Although we could require it.
Right. That's the question.
So we could require it of a certain number. I think it
Affordable
would.
component. The existing bylaw says, as a condition of the grant of any special permit for RCC development containing 6 or more dwelling units, the planning board shall ensure compliance with the provision of 6.1.4 inclusionary housing.
Right, that's in the existing.
It's
don't think that-
8.29 in the new. Sarah, if you go to 8.29.
Thank you.
Mhm.
It's actually 9 point. Yeah. Affordable. Sorry. Yes. Thank you, Laura. As a condition of the grant of any special permit, a minimum of 10% of the total number of dwellings shall be restricted in perpetuity.
Right. Fractions of a lot or dwelling unit shall be rounded up to the nearest whole number, such that a developer proposing 6 dwelling units will require 1 affordable unit, and 11 units shall require 2 affordable units.
And 5, none.
Yeah.
So that part is not in this. I don't believe so.
Yeah, it's not, because this is the inclusionary zoning that we're leaving intact for the moment.
But it's not referenced in this one.
No, it's not referenced. That's correct.
So it should be. If we want to have. I would rather not have it reference another section.
Yeah, it shouldn't reference that because that's the illegal one.
That's,
Well, so actually it does reference it there. It says the planning board shall deny any application for a special permit for development under section 1.3, which is, which is the RCC. And the section of the applicant for a special permit does not agree to do all these things for affordable housing. So any special permit under RCCs would require this currently.
Right, that's the current one.
but that's
So-
because that's in the, but that's because it's in the inclusionary zoning, not because it's in this residential cluster amendment. So
That's
we need
correct.
to move that into this
Well,
or reference the inclusionary zoning in this version.
we could reference it. Maybe it's a good idea. I really don't think we have to, because this says that any RCC would require it.
But that's the section that's illegal that we wanted to delete.
Well, I know, but we're not deleting it.
Well,
You're deleting it if the RCC, this new RCC goes in, right?
no, we haven't, we've left it alone.
Oh,
We decided it was just one more thing that we to take on. So can I make a amendment to your motion, Chris, that we add in the affordable, that we specify the affordable component that's currently listed in the inclusionary zoning as part of this RCC language?
Sure, I'll accept that amendment.
Okay. Ron, are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, and that section is, what was the section you're just reading? Do you know what number? Inclusionary,
I don't know what it is in the new.
okay, a zone, okay, inclusionary zoning, affordability. So the motion, it has been amended, Sharon,
Mhm.
to include the inclusionary zoning affordability requirement in the RCC residential cluster proposal for public hearing. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna come back to the townhouse question.
We have to vote on the motion.
I know. So I'm not gonna talk about townhouses right now. So let's,
Mary has her hand up.
yep, I see that. Thank you. Okay, and I think that this, just to finish out that, we had added a note, how do we handle affordable units of smaller developments? I think the inclusionary zoning language we just added does do that. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mary, go ahead.
So referencing that you needed to add back in the affordability piece, it's in there, at least the latest version that's posted on SharePoint now has it twice. It was just misnumbered. So I think if you scroll up, I don't know if this is the same version.
It should be.
Originally it was in the 8.2.8 and you had 1, 2, and then the affordability was labeled 8.2.9.
Sorry. Affordability, and then,
It's right
It's in
there.
it's in the
There it
change.
Past
It's
it.
in the
so the
change.
affordability, there are two pieces. There's what I added back in, this affordability component, which is the density
Density.
bonus. 9.2.8 is the density bonus. And affordability gives you an additional density up to 20% for additional affordability. The other, which probably should be reordered, but nonetheless, this is that a baseline conditional, you must, in order to get a residential conservation cluster without any density bonus, you must have a minimum of 10% units. And now we're adding into that the language that defines that from the inclusionary existing.
Now, I need to make a point here. Mark Bobrowski pointed out that if you make it a mandatory thing as part of the RCC, and you're trying to encourage RCCs, then a developer is gonna say, why bother doing a conservation cluster if I have to provide an affordable unit, which is gonna make me less money.
But they have less roads and less,
Well, that's, yeah, that's
less
right.
structure. I think that's the argument. Laura, go ahead.
Oh, I still had a lot more to say.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So this is quite different from what Mark Bobrowski had proposed. So I'm wondering, and there's things added since the last version, you know, a month or so ago. So who is adding in and why items like encourage more sensitive reuse of qualifying sites within the RD1, RD2, and G districts so that redevelopment in these populated districts is integrated with surrounding uses and promotes compact pedestrian friendly neighborhoods?
That was a comment we got from the public hearing. That's where it came from.
Can you shoot that to me, Chris?
I don't have the minutes of the
Wait.
public hearing, but
So let's just stop and not worry about where it came from. Do you object to that?
Well, I object to it because it's throughout the document now, which it was just added about a week ago, and that seems to be referencing for the MBTA multifamily housing. And I'm wondering why that's being put in and who's doing that. And if it's a public comment, who's selecting what public comments get put in and which ones don't?
so we are, if you object to that language, Mary, make a motion to take it out. That's simple.
Well, and we all know how the vote's going to go, but I think I'm still looking for an answer to my question of who's putting this language in.
So when I was writing this up, I incorporated language from the public hearing into all of it.
So I think it's the larger issue of that we cannot wordsmith this every line in these meetings. We're very much trying to call out substantive changes that are, and I guess I didn't call it that, you know, have come about. This is the language that's been there for quite some time. So
But
we can,
Sarah, it's not, like I said, I mean, trust me, I have all the versions right in front of me. This was added from 2 weeks ago to now. So I'm wondering why. And if Chris is saying it's from public comment, but he doesn't have anything written from the public comment, I'm just trying to find out why these are added, because to me, that's a substantive change.
so
Why is
I
it-
think we should let's focus on whether we want to keep it in or not. We've been working as hard as we can to create a transparent process. I'm sorry that you don't think that it is, and I appreciate your very careful read. So if you would like to remove it because you think it's not a good idea, then I'm happy to take a motion to that effect.
Well, but, and I will, but Sarah, this is the only time the planning board has to discuss these. I mean, the rush is concerning to me. I think that we never got the requested examples. We never got the requested data. We're just shooting at this, and this.
Mary, okay, I would like to make a motion. I'm a little bit tired of this. I would like to make a motion that we stop the recodification process, put this off till next fall, so that Mary and others can thoroughly vet all the language. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
Okay.
I mean, that was very rude.
Let's
I
get this to
think,
a vote. We're either going ahead with
Okay,
this
so
or
let's
not.
not, any discussion on, I know we have another motion on the table, but we're going to suspend that other motion. Is there any, I will speak against Chris's motion, if I may. And that is, it takes a lot of time to get your head into these things. And it takes a lot of time. We've put a lot of time in, and with Board of Selectmen and others. And we have no assurance that the board, we had 4 items on November's town meeting, and we were asked to peel back to 2. We had a request to do many of these at the April town meeting. They said, oh, please don't, let's wait. And this has been going on long enough. So I'm going to speak against Chris's motion. Gary?
I'm also against Chris's motion. I think you can sort of tell at a glance that these bylaw suggestions are good ones. I don't think you need to fuss over every single sentence, every single paragraph. The principles behind them are sound. I would like to add that for what it's worth, that at some point in the future, we should consider modifying the residential conservation cluster.
And we're only talking about Chris's motion right now.
Okay, sorry, I got sidetracked. Yes.
Okay, Laura? On the Chris's motion to table everything.
Nothing on Chris's motion.
Okay, thank you. Mary, anything else on that? Okay,
No, not on that.
okay, I'll take a vote. Chris, you go first.
No,
Gary,
No.
Ron,
No,
Laura?
Are we voting for
Voting to
Chris's
table,
motion or against
to
it?
table everything until November.
No, I do not vote to table.
Mary?
No.
Okay, and I vote no. All right, so we carry on. So we're talking about the residential conservation cluster and moving it forward as printed. Are there any other comments? Laura, you have your hand up on that.
Yes, thanks. You were just alluding to it, Sarah, moving the affordable component before the density bonus. I think that
Makes
clarifies it.
sense. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. So we
Okay.
would reorganize. So the second piece of this would be to reorganize this so that section not 2.9,
8.29 or 9.29?
yeah, 9 point, the
2.29,
2.9 would be reordered, so it comes before the density bonus.
correct, yeah.
reordered.
And then you only get 2 of the 3 choices, is that right? Because your max.
No, I
is
added in for
21?
today's, I added back in the affordable piece. Sorry, let me make this a little smaller. For today's, we had the 10% for open space,
Yep,
significant amenities, and affordable component. This one somehow fell off in one of the versions.
but can you still only choose as a developer to do 2 of the 3 and get
I think
credit?
the maximum is 20%.
Okay. There was one typo that's been hanging on for a while, right up in 9.21, the purpose.
Yeah,
Number 3.
okay.
I just got 2 more things. So number 3,
So that should be.
take out number 4. And then you're gonna have to, delete that clause because it's redundant.
Yep.
You just stated it below, and then number 4 and number 4. So you're just gonna need to renumber that first section. And my last question, and I think this maybe Chris, you can address this. There's a requirement for an HOA, a homeowners association, which I believe the intent of that is to maintain the open space. If the developer elects or the town agrees that the open space is put into conservation or to town, nonprofit or town status, then is there still a requirement for an HOA? Because couldn't you just turn over effectively the management and the ownership of the conservation land to the town? Sue, looks like you might want to answer that. Maybe, are you responding to me?
No, that wasn't to
Oh,
that.
okay. Okay, Chris, I'm just wondering if an HOA is also a little bit of a disincentive sometimes, and whether it's a requirement of RCC typically.
well, it could be a very simple one. But that's an interesting question. I sort of thought of it it'd be like a condominium association, so it'd be more than the open space that the homeowners association would be worrying about, possibly.
Possibly, but I don't think we're saying this has to be a condo type development, right? It could just be houses, small, clustered on a smaller,
so
effectively, it's a more space efficient subdivision.
So see 9.2.17 right on the screen there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's,
Or the required open space.
Why don't we say that, but may be waived by the planning board, by the
yeah,
special permit process.
actually, that's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you. Those were my questions.
Okay, and you can see, I mentioned that, that the stormwater here is, I changed it from being referencing whatever our old zoning section of the general, of the, stormwater rule 6 point whatever, 15, to just the general bylaws. That's an example of where I tried to do that throughout. Wait a minute, okay, this require.
That's waived by the planning board if the open space is conveyed to.
Why don't we just say if,
Or does you want to just leave it more general?
if appropriate, can I just say,
Okay.
because there might be
Yep.
some,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay, thank
Yep,
you.
thank
Mary, other new comments?
Yes, I have a question on 8.2.13. So our similar current bylaw has 60% open space. This goes down to 20%.
Mhm.
And then 8.2.13.3 says the planning board can permit up to 10% of such open land to be paved or built upon. So is that then saying that it's down to 10% open space, true open space?
No, 10% of the open space may be paved.
That's her point.
Yeah, so does that potentially get down to what we're
No.
getting with the residential conservation cluster? It's 10% open space?
No, there's 90, you'd have 90%
18%.
of an open space will be open space and 10% of the open space could be paved.
Can you say that again?
So right here, permit up to 10% of such open space. So it's not 10%, it's 10% of the open space.
Right, so it's saying you need 20% open space,
Yeah,
right?
So so let's call that 100 feet.
So
Let's
then
call
it
this
says,
10. So
um,
of that 100 feet, 10 feet, 10 square feet could be paved. Not,
okay, gotcha.
okay,
Okay, thank you.
great. Good question. Gary?
Open space can be usable and functional if it's paved. Is there a definition of open space here that maybe what you do is you exclude parking cannot be part of the considered open space kind of a thing? Is that defined in there?
should be used for conservation, historic preservation, education. It doesn't say parking is allowed.
'Cause, Cambridge, I know in their bylaws has a pretty good, they have some very, very good wording about required green spaces and open spaces. I'm just,
Let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good here.
right,
What is-
fine, but it might be something to, let's pass it and something that we could modify the following.
Well, let's take up any new comments, Sue?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
This is picky, and it's a back up where it says it's about the views shall be protected from roads, and it says or other places. And I really think that could be construed to mean from a private property, which I don't think you want to get in to say that you're responsible for protecting views from every private property.
Views? Is the word
Yeah.
views in there?
So it's way up at the beginning, in the
Preamble.
the reasons, the purpose, the preamble.
Okay, sorry.
It says protect scenic vistas from the towns, roadways, and other
Vistas.
places, which I just think that is, if it's other public places, I think that's okay. But I think if people can come and say, hey, my back porch is a place, and now you've got something in front of me and I don't like it. So I just think it's,
So you would suggest adding the word public in there?
I would say, I think that's appropriate.
Okay,
I said it was picky, and I'm sorry.
okay.
No, it's good.
Anybody
It's a
have
good
an
thing.
objection to that? Okay, hearing none. Laura,
I'm sorry, I had one more. I'm just looking at my
Yeah.
comment in the document. It is in 9.2.13, number 4.
point 2.13.
Number 4 starts with underground utilities.
Yep.
And I'm proposing to add a clause or substitute may be located within the contiguous open space with and shall be located so as to avoid disturbance to the most sensitive and noteworthy natural resources, which is what we referred to earlier in the document.
Okay, shall be
And
located.
shall be located so as to avoid disturbance to the most sensitive and noteworthy natural resources within the contiguous open space.
Did you have and sensitive in there?
Not yet.
Most noteworthy and most sensitive and noteworthy.
There you go.
I'm just
Sensitive.
repeating the language from earlier in the document. Thanks, Sue.
All right, great.
Thanks.
Let me ask, okay, since we do have a motion on the table, let's try to vote it all at once. And that is, the other question came up about townhouses. As the last, I think it's our last remaining issue on this. Where is it? Somebody asked about townhouse configuration. So this is under the types of buildings. The residential cluster shall consist of the following types of dwellings: single family in all eligible districts, 2-family in RD1 and RD2, and 3-family in general. So I think the question, I don't know who asked.
I asked it.
Yeah. So,
So the reason I asked it is because some of the most attractive and successful clusters in town are townhouses. So why should we not allow them?
the other thing about townhouses is that they're harder to add on to and therefore tend to stay less costly, less expensive. Because if you can't buy it and add another 4,000 square feet to it or whatever.
Yeah,
So do you have a proposal, Chris?
I guess I would amend this further to allow townhouse configurations.
So that's,
So it's a single family and townhouses in all eligible districts, 2-family in the RD1 and RD2, and 3-family in the G district.
Chris, how about would you consider, instead of calling them townhouses, would you consider them to be the same as single family attached, detached, or attached? Does townhouse construe a particular style?
I guess you
Where-
could also say a 0 lot line, I suppose would be the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree entirely with your the
Intent.
purpose intent. Yes.
That was my question. Do we have a definition of townhouse?
No, probably not.
I like the idea of a 0 lot line.
I don't think 0 lot line is the term you want to use. You'd want to use units that are attached by a single party wall. Because that's a fire rated and sound separation wall, and any 2 units could be attached, partially attached, completely attached, whatever. It's not about where they sit on the lot in terms of setback, it's about their attachment.
Say that again, Gary. I thought that was a good.
It's not about where they.
No,
sit on the
what you
lot.
said about the how we're going to define this.
Well, you said single family dwellings or units
Or just dwellings.
or attached with a party wall, single party wall. You could even take.
Why don't we say may be allowed? So they're just to kind of.
You could take out single because there might be a clever design where they overlap a bit, but and you're saying special permit, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, that would work well.
So they're all of this is special permit.
Right?
So that would allow that. Okay. Let me come back to you, Mary, unless you have a comment on this issue, and then we'll come back to you on other issues.
No, I don't have other issues. I just have a comment on this issue. Why wouldn't we use the same definition that we use for a two-family with, we don't say party wall, we say, you know, sharing a firewall.
That's a equivalent term.
Okay, firewall.
Well, or whatever, yeah, is said in the, but I guess then my other question with that is this saying townhouses in single resident districts?
Yes.
Yes,
it's the same.
it is, but by special permit.
With, the issue is, though, if you have enough area for two single-family districts, single-family homes, you could attach them together. Because let's say you had, if, to make it simple, you have a requirement for 1,000 square feet for the lot, and you had 2,000 square feet, then you could have two homes, but they could be together. So therefore you would have less roads, less parking, and maybe more open space if you did that. Just in the very simplest of terms.
Yeah, it's a very small cluster.
Right. But I think if you think about it that way, you can see how you would have probably less opportunity for making those things giant in the future. Okay. So we have a motion on the table. We've taken some friendly amendments. The motion is to advance the residential cluster with these changes to the public hearing. Any other discussion? Are you hearing none? Chris?
Yes,
Ron?
Yeah, yes.
Mary?
No,
Gary?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, great, thank you. Let me make sure to save that. Thank you for all your careful read. The last one, we're making progress here, is, go back to my PowerPoint. Section 6. So section 6, to marry your question about how did we get to the proposed section 6, I think Laura and Chris sat down and basically did an entire rewrite. You guys can correct me. I think there are a couple of things. One is all the blank sections, and then this issue of performance, prescriptive requirements versus performance requirements that we talked about earlier. And the third issue is that in section 6 and section 12, we have this giant overlap between the site plan review and the special permit requirements. And so the proposal, I think, is to have section 6 have standards and section 12 have process. And there's a little bit of fine tuning there. And then I mentioned before that special permit is going to be referenced as required by this bylaw instead of with a section just throughout.
so Sarah, one correction.
Yes.
90% of this language is Mark Bobrowski, and we went through a long time ago all of these standards, lighting, site development, traffic, all of it. We went through in quite some detail.
Yeah.
There is some tweaking that Laura and I did, and Laura wanted to make it more performance-based, which I agree. But the general language is almost word for word out of Bobrowski.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
agreed. We started with Mark's draft and then
Right. So we
added some more.
actually have some things that that Chris highlighted to talk about tonight. But before we do that, I would like to ask for a motion to propose that Chris and Laura be given the authority to align the special permit requirements between section 6 and the new section 12 to create performance standards that support the existing prescriptive standards. but give the planning board greater flexibility to apply best management practices and incorporate peer review.
Yeah, so moved.
Chris, can I get a second?
Yeah, sure, I'll second it. I'm not sure what it means, but I'll second it.
Well, I think that we're not going to be able to wordsmith every word of this tonight, and we're trying to get it to a public hearing, not have it perfect tonight necessarily. But I want to give you guys the authority to try to align these things as you already have. As we talk tonight, we're going to have a few more things to talk about. Any discussion on this motion? Ron? Can I get a vote, Ron? Oh, sorry, Mary, do you have comment on the motion?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of not clear what the ask of Chris and Laura is. I mean, and to create performance standards, I'm not clear what that is.
Laura, can you give us an example of a performance versus a prescriptive standard?
Yeah, so performance would say, for instance, about lighting, you cannot emit glare, you have to meet dark sky requirements, things like that, allow more, they allow some discretion and flexibility in how the requirements are met, but they set the criteria for the standards that you're going to look for.
Can I just elaborate on that as an
Yeah.
example? I was involved in the Memorial School, and I don't know what the lighting standards were in that special permit. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it at that time, but I think it's very overlit, the parking lot at the Memorial School, and that was a special permit review. And it probably is because we had some sort of, safety standard of how many light poles, but it doesn't really comply with, had we been reviewing that, I think there's an opportunity in that particular special permit to have said, let's reduce the number of lights, let's require that they be turned off at 10 o'clock at night, or some other kinds of performance standards, rather than in order to reduce the glare on the neighborhood and so forth. That's a very specific example, just to follow up from Laura's. But I think another example of performance standards is on, the topographic changes. Like, what's our purpose here? Our purpose is to not blast away hillsides, and as opposed to worrying about how many having somebody get to 98 cubic yards of rock and not having it apply because they didn't get to 100 cubic yards of rock. That our purpose is to not destroy the landscape, and so if we have a don't destroy the landscape kind of performance standard, then we have more flexibility.
When we get to the landscape section, Sarah, I think the preamble that I tried to write there talks, that's in a performance-based language, so it's about landscape is not just something what you're trying to do is capture the environmental benefits. So stormwater management, shade and cooling, air quality, the things that you're trying to achieve with whatever section you're talking about.
So we are going to talk about section 6. My point in this motion was simply to ask that we align the special permit in particular, and just be able to fine tune this once we go through the issues tonight.
So Sarah, you're asking us to get 12 talking about process, how you go through the application, and then in 6 is what the standards will be.
Well, just get rid of the duplication.
There's a lot of duplication. Yeah, I've noticed that. It's confusing.
So there would be,
will we have this before the public hearing?
Yeah, sure, we'll do it before the public hearing, absolutely.
well, that's a week and a half.
So, and will we have time to discuss, or we're just going to bring it to public hearing?
We have one meeting next week, so maybe we can get at least an update. I don't know if it can be done by then. That's maybe not reasonable.
Okay.
We can sit here and go through the whole thing tonight if you want, but I'm trying to help us move along.
Well, I'm willing to work with Chris and get as far as we can get.
Okay.
I haven't
we'll
really looked at
update
it
next week.
I think it's a
We'll
good
put
idea,
it-
though.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Ron,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes,
Laura,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes, thank you. And obviously, we'll comments, so let's review the document. We came up with the decisions called out. Chris, I'm gonna let
Oh, God.
let me make this so we can see it. And I don't,
Okay.
so the first one is the parking. Mary, you had concerns that the parking requirements have been changed. Is this not the right one? Hold
Yeah,
on.
that's the right one. Yep. That's
Okay.
right.
Yep. So
Yeah,
I'll come
so,
back to that. Okay. Go ahead.
you know, the version that Chris referenced that we had gone over with Bobrowski has been changed a lot. So again, I kind of don't know when that happened or why, but you know, so that's a question. And then since some of these things had been discussed with Bobrowski, and I think we were going to revisit it, but I don't know that we ever did, about the truck size that would be allowed.
We actually, that one, we decided we were gonna move that to the general bylaws. The storage of commercial vehicles has now been put in general bylaws, because then it applies more broadly than just, I think you may have missed that meeting, but we voted to put that in the propose that the truck size parking limit to the general bylaws.
Oh, okay. Is that something that the BOS they're talking about tonight?
I think they're talking about what to do about it, not necessarily the substance of it. But
Because just to point out, you know, nobody has to answer, but so now we're saying a parking size can be 9 by 18, yet like an F-150 is 19 feet. So we're saying, yes, you can park these larger vehicles, but we're gonna require a smaller size. So that doesn't really line up with me. So yeah, and it seemed like the parking, so like in the LCD, we had a parking area setback of 200 feet and it changed to 50 feet. I don't know where that came from. And
so rather than worrying about whether okay, I think this is how it actually helps us a little bit. Sorry.
well, you know, I'm past the where it came from, but I would like to understand whoever changed it, why. And is that good for Manchester?
I can address the parking stall size. Should I talk, Sarah, about that one?
Go ahead.
I believe that's in Mark Bobrowski's language is when that originated, but that is a typical stall design size, and it is geared towards passenger vehicles, not towards a commercial, you know, 10,000 ton truck. So we're not addressing those, and I don't think that we should be when we're talking about standard parking spaces. That's just a design size for a typical parking stall.
It's also a minimum.
No,
Right.
that,
No one says you have to be 18 feet.
yeah, no, understood where it came from. And I'm just saying there's inconsistency of what we're proposing, but with the LCD, the 200-foot setback, where is that getting us?
The 200-foot setback, I think, was in the discussion about the LCD and providing more flexibility to go through the site plan process and look at the best outcome for site development. And it was simply giving more flexibility and a larger possible footprint to kind of work within, but knowing that an intent of the site plan review is still going to be managing the view sheds and you know, not having encroachment. I think that simply came out of the dimensional, you know, relaxing the dimensional requirements of the LCD to allow for development of these uses.
But it wasn't it's not in the LCD bylaw. That wasn't in what was proposed. It's just. in
Thought
the-
it was actually, but I may be wrong about that.
The LCD setbacks were, and the pervious surfaces were allowed. I think Mary's talking about this. This is
Talking about
within
the parking.
section.
Okay.
So within the LCD, parking area shall be within 50 feet of any street, no part. And that's down from the 200 feet that was, so I think that this is a sort of an echo of that discussion that we had around the LCD, and that most of the uses in the LCD require a special permit. And therefore, so I think that's where that's coming from. So I guess the question I have is the intent to try to, I guess, as Mark Bobrowski suggested, kind of update these requirements, or should we revert back to those that we have had before? I think that's kind of a.
Well, and just because my other concerns with that, which I had voiced before, is that we're removing the need for safety to, with new curb cuts and development, to not back out onto a street. And I think, you know, that coupled with so many other things, I mean, to me and residents I speak with, we're moving in the wrong direction for all of this. I can completely understand the not wanting to have a lot of impervious surface. But we're kind of, you know, getting away from that when we're saying, you know, with all the building and the density. So we're kind of talking both ends. So we're not being consistent with that either. So being the
So I
board.
came up with,
look at-
I came up with some language, Mary, that to address your concerns, and that's the second decision on parking we have to make.
Yeah, so with, you know, with the planning board being focused on safety, I think that should be in the forefront of that discussion.
So I think this is your proposed language, right, Chris?
Yes,
So if feasible, single-family driveways onto heavily trafficked roadway or scenic highway should be designed to allow vehicles to enter the roadway front first to minimize conflict with pedestrians and bicycles. I think that's a good addition.
Yeah.
I know
I had that comment too. This was one that I felt, do feel strongly about, actually the benefits of being able to have, you know, in the village where you have smaller lots and more closely settled neighborhoods are kind of historic core, that you do retain the ability to back out. And when you have a slower moving or smaller streets, that can actually be traffic calming, just the way parallel parking is traffic calming. So I don't see that as a safety issue. I do see the addition of, you know, having to enlarge paved areas in these kind of historic settlements as being detrimental to the town character that we really love, as well as, I mean, impervious surface is another part of that, but I think it is just reflective of that if you require that, you cannot get a town center that looks like the one that we have, where the buildings are kind of close in together. And there are these houses that were developed before cars where now people back out into the road and just do it. The streets are slow enough, people have good visibility, and you slowly back out, and you know, it happens all the time. And I think it's within the realm of acceptable urban and typical urban form.
Oh,
So
and
that's why I was
definitely, I mean,
arguing
on
for
an
that.
existing, you know, that's why it's in the zoning bylaws, because that's, you know, it's only going to happen or be triggered when somebody wants to tear down a house or move a driveway or things like that. So that, you know, we've got that throughout town, the smaller driveways that people can only back out. I mean, that's just, yes, the nature of the small town, that's a given. I think when new houses are built or things are changed and people max out the lot with the house, with the building, and then the driveway and the parking comes last, and then there's no room left to do it safely, I think, just the reason why it's in our current zoning bylaws is they're looking out for the safety of the future of the town. So that's
Yeah,
my
I think-
comment on that.
Yeah, I hear you. I think this is one like overly lighting that is perceived to add safety, but actually doesn't, because if you're in a smaller road and people are backing out, then traffic is going to slow down to recognize it. So I don't see it as a safety concern when you're dealing with small lots. If you're in a big, 2-acre lot, then by all means, there's room to turn around, but I think we should not be imposing this on our small lots. So that was where I was coming from. I'll finish there. Thanks.
Sue, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the reduction in the setbacks, for example, in the limited commercial district is a case of where a performance standard works so much better, because if you say it has to be 200 away, yet the flattest land is within that 200 setback, then you're forcing a poor design. So I think it just, by having it a special permit instead of a site plan review, a full special permit, it allows you to make those decisions without having that criteria, that 200-foot or other types of prescriptive criteria. Rather, you can decide what is the best interest of that particular site plan. So I just wanted to see it not as us reducing requirements, but rather to make decisions on what makes a better design.
Okay, I want to try to get back to the decisions we need to make in section 6 here. Gary, you have another comment?
Is there a motion made to
Not
adopt
yet.
this language?
Not yet. I want to
make it.
I think we're not quite ready yet. I want to like to talk through these, if you don't mind, talk through these decisions just for a second. I'm going to start at the top just to go parking requirements. Are there any modifications to the proposed parking requirements in the section that was on the web for today? All right, I'm seeing none.
I just had a question. So the version 6 that you put out on as the latest version doesn't have any of this in there.
Right, for the section, I tried in my memo to say that section 6 for April 26th is the section 6 proposal. And there was another document that Chris tried to call out to highlight the decisions. So I'm looking at the section 6 for discussion April 26th. And we created another document that was just the decisions. So just the decisions.
My only comment would be, at least in the version I have, under accessory uses, is that GVW of 14,000 pounds, but you said that moved to general bylaws?
We moved that to the general bylaws. I think, I mean, we moved it out of section 4. Let me see. GVW. Okay. No, interesting. We actually changed it. We took it out of section 4. That's interesting. That's where the. We were trying to find that. I have another slide that asks the question about that. Okay, so let's. I know Christine had wanted this to be 10,000 pounds. But this is not this is
just allowing it as a use.
No, this is simply specifying it as a parking. If you have that, if you're allowed to have that vehicle, how much parking do you need? This is what this table is. If you have a use that allows you to have a commercial vehicle, how much parking do you need for it? That's what this question is. And I think I don't know how we determine that. I would have no expertise to know what that is.
I mean, parking space required would have to be at least 1 then.
certainly can change this to one. But
One for each vehicle, one for, well, you're only allowed one, so it would have to be one.
how about we could say
Commercial
one
vehicle.
section size?
Aren't we just moving this out of this table altogether and into the bylaw? So couldn't we strike it?
I think we can. I think we can just strike it. I agree.
Yeah, I think that's a good
I
idea.
think that's good. Okay, good thought. The question was up to 4 boarders in a single dwelling, how many parking spaces do we need?
There are
There
none
are-
required now.
There are
There are
none
none.
required because it also is a use that could ebb and flow. Someone might have them
Sure.
one year, they might not have them another year. So it's like requiring it for the number of children you have. It's kind of silly.
It
Yeah,
hasn't
should we
really
strike that
been, no one has ever raised this as an issue, so I think we just leave it as
Right.
it is.
This table may want to align, we should probably take a stab at aligning this table with our other table. Right? This is kind of like a repeat of the,
They were together at one point and then we
Right.
divided.
okay. Maybe there's a way to consolidate these things. Let's not worry about that for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Tennis courts, swimming pools, I think we can leave those, customary home occupation. Do we call that out today? No requirements?
Are we also
No.
striking number 6 since we've decided to take that out? Or we're proposing to delete that?
Oh, yeah.
Good call.
I think NA is okay.
Hmm.
Accessory uses of the same lot, customary incidental permanent use. is the same. I think we can. Where did these come from? These 1 space per 10 children?
They're from Mark Bobrowski.
All right. Anybody want to propose any changes to these? Hearing none. Okay, so that's so backing out with this addition, is everybody okay with this addition?
Can I make a comment on this?
Absolutely.
This if feasible and should, why don't we just say take if feasible out and should out, and then say unless allowed by the inspector of buildings with the advice of the planning board, maybe.
How about the
should be more-
DPW that we're putting curb cut the DPW?
So I would be more definitive, because it's if feasible, I mean, gives a lot of wiggle room. And I would say you have to do it unless it's okay by someone else, by the planning board or the DPW. I think that might be a better way to write that, but I'll leave it up to the board.
I'd like to just say state highways.
I agree. That was gonna be my comment. Heavily
Because
trafficked is
What's a
qualitative.
heavily trafficked road? That's sort of a subjective, but state highways are defined. I can undo these.
Sarah,
Yes.
I think there already is a state law for state highways that you're supposed to come out head first.
And I think
if
that's-
feasible for other heavily trafficked roadways is what we should be focusing on as a suggestion and not a mandate.
Well, we can mandate it and decide,
So Laura's made a case for not mandating it. That's
Right.
That's what I'm
Yep.
saying. We could suggest it and not mandate it, but we shouldn't even be talking about state highways because they already have their own law. Which many of our houses in town don't comply with because that's just the way they were built. But
I don't have a strong feeling about this.
How about
Right.
single family? How, do we have a lot size difference in, it's really about the D and C and the small lot zoning areas, that's where the difficulty is with the, the densest settlement is happening, where you really, by having to back out, you're going to be paving people's front and side yards. But on the large lots, which maybe is District C and others,
How about if you
There.
just say that the
Yeah.
highways, the driveway shall be designed to minimize conflicts with pedestrians and bicycles?
I think the question here is the section is on backing.
backing, yeah.
Oh, it's called backing.
Shall is a mandate. I thought you were not suggesting a mandate.
Well, Ron has suggested
The top one is about
commercial.
commercial and multifamily. The question is what you want to do about single family. I also think that the heavily trafficked, and I don't know the state highway laws, but I think the intent of what you've got is right. I understand that if feasible
What if
objection, but
You say if feasible, it's just,
Yeah,
might as well not say anything.
right.
I'm
Enforces
very
the
strongly
state
against the
highway.
shall portion.
Okay, let's, I think we have disagreement on this. So I'm gonna ask for somebody to make a motion to,
you could say shall unless waived by the Department of Public Works.
right, that's what,
Which is the permitting authority for driveways.
waived by,
And under
Oh,
what
okay.
circumstances would they waive then? Anytime you're in the,
safety, right?
Right.
I guess, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's not getting at the intent that I was going for, which is in the,
I think this whole section
Densest part of
personally
town.
should be removed completely, because I don't know anybody in town knows when this was ever passed at town meeting to begin with as a mandate. And it's true, why would the DPW waive it? The problem, one of the many problems with it, it could be very expensive to have to put retaining walls in and extra paving to have a turnaround. It shouldn't
Right,
be
that's sort of,
mandated at all.
yeah. Yeah, how about we just cut off the whole yellow clause and leave it at commercial, which was the original intent?
yeah. I'm good with that. Anybody object to that, Mary?
I agree with that.
Well, of course, I object to it because it's changing what we currently have, but I had a comment back to the table.
Okay, let's finish this out. Any objection to just striking this for now?
Yeah, Mary objects.
I object.
Okay. Any other more than any additional objections? Sorry. Okay, Mary, go back to your table question.
So in our current parking section, we have under the number of off-street parking spaces, we then have a note at the bottom that says all other uses, parking spaces adequate to accommodate all normal demand as determined by the building inspector with the advice of the planning board. So for the items up above that you said we didn't really have definitions on with borders or those types of things, that would all apply to this sentence.
Yes.
So that should be added in somewhere.
Okay, I think that's a good suggestion. Does anybody object to that? Can you put that in the chat, please?
Oh, let's see.
I can.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna say, I mean, I think that there's I think that's an example of actually a performance standard rather than a prescriptive standard. Okay, okay, the next decision, setbacks about parking. Chris, can you summarize where we are with this? No part of any parking area except within the driveway should be located within the front yard. And no parking area should be located within 5 feet of the property. So this is about the parking area where you park your car. So this is very much about trying to keep the character. We talk a lot about the character of the town and we never really define it. But if you drive down Pine Street, for example, the character of the town is homes close to the road without parking lots in front of their homes. And actually some communities require that parking be behind the house for new homes. That is a common sort of village type requirement. Like Nantucket has that, or Lincoln has that as a requirement, that they require that the parking be behind. I believe that that's considered, like when I was in grad school, that was like one of the things, like park behind keep your front yard as a yard. If you think about it, I happen to have a house that has a giant, my parking is right at the front door, and it's unfortunate. It's like it doesn't, you come in and all you see is parking. So I think that's what this is saying.
So
That's the
the
intent.
part about the limited commercial district, I think maybe we should not specify anything except to say that parking within the limited commercial district shall be regulated by the planning board as part of its site plan review process.
Right.
I agree. It seems like
agree.
we ought to strike things in general to the LCD because you're not going to look here for LCD.
Right.
It ought to be all in the site permit review.
Right.
Special permit review, sorry.
Anybody have an objection to that?
I think you should modify the beginning of it to say no part of any required parking area
Oh, good idea.
shall be located within the front setback, which is a normal thing. Where you actually park is up to you, but you have to at least provide spaces to meet the code.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know. No, I don't think you want an optional parking area in your front yard either.
No, the required parking area should not be in your front setback. So you
Right.
provide two
North-
spaces deep in the lot. But if your driveway is there, you can park in your driveway as much as you want. Everybody does.
Well, yeah, that's
Well, it
different.
says you
That's a
can.
parking area. That's different.
Pardon?
It says you can park in your driveway.
But you don't want an optional parking area in your front yard.
No.
Not just the required,
Right.
but you wouldn't want to
Yeah,
put overflow there either. So I understand what you're saying, but I think we're already covered to say that you can park in your driveway.
Right. And you can park on, if you happen to have a wildflower garden or a lawn, you can park on it, but it's not, that's where you're not going to we're not allowing people to put paved parking in their front lawn.
You agree with adding required parking area at the beginning?
No. I think we leave it as is.
A residential zone is in your driveway or parking area,
Generally.
and they're one and the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so that's the little LCD. So I think we've done this one. Don't forget, we just voted that Laura and Chris are gonna clean this up a bit. I'm saving this for tonight in a special folder that's just tonight's stuff. So
Okay.
back to you. Parking area plantings. So this is really a good example of a performance intent, right?
Mhm.
Although this gets prescriptive here.
Yeah, I'd say it's prescriptive and it's probably better ones, but I don't know if we're.
No, our bandwidth.
Yeah, I
is-
think this came from Mark Borowski.
It's all
Yeah.
Mark.
I
So
think
at least-
there are.
And we don't have any of that now, right?
We
Yeah,
do.
But
We
it's
do, it's very similar.
okay.
Right.
And then this is an addition, correct?
Yeah, this is from
Yes.
Laura.
I think
Yes,
it's great.
because we really don't address bicycles much in our current zoning because they are mostly in an area where, when it was more car
Right. I think it's a great.
dominated.
Any objections to that?
No, but should it, is this in talking about things other than single family? It says for all developments. Does that mean?
Well, this is the whole parking section, so
That was my question as well. I think you have to differentiate that this is for commercial development.
Multi-unit, multi-unit.
Right. Commercial
No,
or
for-
and multifamily.
Sure.
Okay, good addition. Then there's the whole, you guys didn't change the sign stuff at all, right?
no, that's what's there.
I did, or maybe did I? Gosh, it's been so long now. I mean, I know I was looking for things like no flashing or internally illuminated signs, and honestly, I can't remember if Mark put it in or if I
Yeah,
added it long
it's in there.
since.
It's in there,
I
it's
haven't-
always been in
I
there.
think
It's always been in
Tyler's
there, okay, because I do remember reading other zoning.
There are much better signing ordinances, but I think it's over,
Yeah.
or that's next year or the year after.
Yep.
Yeah.
And many of them go into general bylaws.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and it should go into general
to go
bylaws.
into general bylaws. And we need to reference, figure out what those sections, those prior sections are. And figure out probably, I think we should say as permitted elsewhere in this bylaw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah,
My comment on the signs is the real estate sign not over 6 square feet. 6 square feet is quite large. I don't know that I've ever seen well, maybe I have, but that seems larger than what's currently out there.
I agree, but it's what's currently in place.
6 square
Yeah,
feet is a 2x3. That's not very.
yeah,
not
that's a
very big.
2x3 sign.
That's not very big. Once you add sale pending or
Well,
Yeah,
it's
all
all
the
temp-
Under
realtors' names
contract.
and all the rest, yeah.
hopefully they're all temporary signs anyway.
Okay, so that's no change, so let's maybe try to okay, site plan review and special permit. Can you guys walk us through a little bit the,
So this is all from Mark Bobrowski. When I started reading through exemptions, I wondered why lighting in swimming pools and other water features would be exempted, but maybe they should be. I don't know. Seemed arbitrary. It's not, I don't think it's much of an issue, so I'm sorry I brought it up.
I think that exempting it is okay. Myself, any objection to just? Okay. I'm gonna delete okay, the next one is, okay, special permit site. Oh, that we'll figure that out, 6.3 or.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is probably all goes to 12.
Yeah. Right, because there's like all this stuff about how many, it's really duplicative. Because it's
Yeah.
talking about the expenses and all that, so that doesn't need to be here. This
Yeah.
is,
Right.
and I think you guys can, this isn't substantive, it's just redundant.
Correct.
This is all this application requirements, this all
I
goes, to-
think what we need to do is refer people to section 12.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
When you guys do this, are you going to give some kind of comment so the public knows why we've done some of these things, or?
Yep. We're hoping to do it with all the changes we're making, yes.
So you'll have some column somewhere where the reason we moved it to 12 was this and that.
Yep,
Redundancy or whatever, so it's clear.
yes.
Okay, and so that then we have general standards for lighting, which we've just talked a little bit about. Preserve night sky, this is the,
This is
Oh.
more performance.
are performance standards,
standards,
noise.
yeah, about like
So
preserving.
this
like,
first part
value.
is just outlining the topics, and then
Yep.
then each
Yeah.
one is in detail.
Yes, right.
Right. So those are what they're gonna be. And then we get into the actual standards, which are more performance-based than we have previously had. Right?
And yeah, I hope
Right,
so.
correct. I did pull performance-based standards for this one.
So I feel like this is a great step forward because there's a lot of these kinds of flashing lights and so I thought these were fabulous. One of the things that concerns me, for example, is in the construction architecture industry, architects love lighting up their buildings with LED lights, which, you know, all night long, like purple for
Mhm.
some awareness and another color for, and I don't think when you think about the character of Manchester, I think that's something we, at least in my opinion, is like not consistent with character, doesn't add any safety, doesn't add value. So,
Mhm.
so I like what you've proposed here. So exact same, the hours of use, noise standards.
I think this all came from Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So topographic changes, let's come back.
So take,
Well, take it away, Chris, on that one.
so we have to, so I tried to incorporate topographical changes into this. And I quickly realized that that's a bad idea, so I just simply referred to it.
Okay,
Is it-
so we can leave this as this.
Yeah, I think so, yes.
All right. So this is simply saying, instead of repeating it,
Right.
and stormwater, we do the same. Well, first of all, let's take this one. Site design should be guided by energy conservation, sustainability principles.
But Laura added that, and I think it's a good thing to add.
Okay. Historic preservation of existing vegetation. I like, is this a new or is this existing?
This is all Mark.
Or, yeah. Limit of clearing, finished grade.
I did make one, finished grade, made a comment on the SharePoint document.
I know I didn't-
So the last sentence in number 9, the design of grade changes at the base of existing large trees shall be subject to the approval of the planning board. I recommend we strike that. If you make a grade change at the base of an existing large tree, then you
You're gonna kill
destroy
it.
the tree. Yeah. so
Yeah,
there's no
that's a
point
good
in
point.
having the planning board review it. Either you remove it or you maintain it and protect it.
Yeah,
I agree.
me too.
Okay. Okay, traffic management standards. This is all from Mark
Yep,
that you guys talked about a long time ago. So what, okay, curb cuts.
I think these just all came from Mark. We didn't add anything to it.
Is there a decision there that needs to be made?
I'm trying to think what it is. Oh, the width of the driveway. I guess, I mean, that's awfully wide, you know, I don't know whether we want
It's
to.
very wide for a one-way. It just, I don't, it's nothing.
Seems
we've already
wide. We
discussed
just,
this.
yeah, we just decided on 16 feet for one, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I'd be happy reducing it from 20 and 18 or something.
These are for special permit reviews.
That's correct.
So they can be waived by the planning board. So they could be also be increased, alternatively could be increased by the planning board.
Well, they can be less.
But the numbers you
can't be
provide
more.
here are guidance for people that are reviewing And I agree with Chris's suggestion of smaller numbers. If anybody worries about actual safety, this is a safety issue way more than the backing out.
Right. This says in no case shall exceed, so these are maximums.
Right.
Unless waived by the planning board.
But
Right.
they serve as suggestions to the reviewing board when they see some numbers there as targets.
Right.
Yeah,
So do you want to
Yeah.
make this 22 and 18?
So the only question I have is,
16, not 18 is too much for a single, sorry.
I would question it because I would think that it may have something to do with safety vehicles.
And also, what's our subdivision rules say? Our subdivision rules are
I
closer
mean,
to,
this asks for for it to be limited to the minimum width. And that this is the outside dimension. I don't think these are, I
Yeah.
don't think one would read that as this is
Can we
what
just
we're
strike the
targeting.
dimensional requirements? We said the minimum width for safe entering and exiting.
yeah, let's get it.
Or-
okay,
And shall be determined by, and shall be approved.
as determined by the planning board.
They go to DPW.
Ron wants out of curb.
Yeah. Judy, you have a
Well,
thought about good practice here?
It's a special permit review, though. This is that we're in it. This is under special
mean,
permit. This isn't
A
every,
9-foot lane is perfectly adequate for, car driving, but a fire truck is going to require a larger lane, and it depends on if they have a turn to make. What I think we don't want to get to is, suburbs that have these 30-foot wide minimum,
Right.
cul-de-sac
Yeah,
type
Okay,
roads.
this is a special permit. Curb cut shall be limited to the minimum width for safe entering and exiting as
That-
determined by,
determined by the planning board in consultation with the fire department and the police department.
okay.
That seems okay.
Yeah, because I do think, some developments are gonna be serviced by large trucks.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
equipment, et cetera, so.
Did I miss something? Are we defining maximum curb cut width?
yes.
Yes,
Well, there was a
I think we
maximum
just
curb
take,
cut
I
width
think
in
we
here.
just took it out. I think we could get rid of,
It
You
depends on the
said
design
DPW, you
vehicle.
said, you should say police, not DPW. I think you said police. Or you
I mean,
could say appropriate safety departments or
Public safety,
Public
in
safety.
consultation with
public safety, public
You can take
safety,
out
yeah.
fire department, it could just
Yeah.
be public safety.
That way it gives you more leeway.
That's good. Yep. Take it out later. Yeah.
so I think to Mary's question, we've taken out any minimums or maximums, but just asked that it be the minimum width for safe entering. I think that, but it's as determined by the planning board.
yeah, I think that's good. Performance based.
Yep.
Okay. Traffic studies required. Proposed mitigations, all these are for developments in excess of 25,000 square feet. Applicants traffic management component. I think that's fine. Okay. Level of service maintenance or improvement. Is that what's in there now?
Yeah, this is Bobrowski.
It's not in our current.
I don't think it is.
No, yeah, this is all new. We
Okay.
really didn't have these
Any of this,
standards. No,
the traffic is referenced above, so I think we can,
Yeah, traffic management planner,
is that what it's called?
yeah.
Okay. Pedestrian access, bike access. Okay, I'm getting aesthetic standards. Views. Here's where we call out view sheds. Okay. Compatibility with the neighborhood. And landscaping and screening. So Laura, you want to talk about landscaping and
Yes. So this comment about reworking I had made early on, that just to sort of flag it, that it could use an update. So typically the older version of zoning around landscaping refers to it as strictly for screening purposes. You're trying to hide something ugly on the site, and the more current environmentally kind of best practices is actually the functional kind of green infrastructure uses of landscape. So what I have proposed is alternate languages, first putting those kind of environmental benefit green infrastructure first in the purpose, and then followed by the screening, so that you're flipping it and you're emphasizing that the functional requirements, functional criteria are the more important ones. That screening is also important, but it kind of comes secondary. So do you want me to
Can
read
you
it?
give us a draft of?
Yes, I
Okay, sorry.
did.
Share your screen.
Sure, I can share my screen. Just a moment.
Can you share?
Yep, sorry, 1 second. Okay, how's that?
Great.
So the yellow is my proposed additional text, and then the strikeout is striking out what I had previously written when I was still kind of thinking about it. So upfront and purpose, the purpose of the section is that through green infrastructure landscaping practices, using vegetation, soils, and natural features, the development shall reduce runoff, treat stormwater at its source, promote groundwater recharge, protect water and air quality, provide shade and cooling with canopy trees and plantings to mitigate urban heat island effect, and provide landscape amenities that contribute to human and environmental health. And then landscaping shall screen negative impacts from public and private view, and shall avoid and or minimize clearing of trees and mature vegetation, minimize soil removal and grade change. That was there from before. I didn't change that. And then I just struck out this next sentence, which was sort of a repeat of what I had stated up above. And then lastly, some comments again, more towards sort of sustainability principles, requiring adaptive or drought tolerant species, prohibiting invasives, and where you're restoring a disturbed area for kind of a natural growth, that we use native plants in those areas.
Okay.
So who decides if it's a drought resistant species, or I mean, who makes
The
that?
landscape architect for the developer would make a recommendation, provide a plant list.
Okay.
So I think this is an example though of a performance-based intent, where when somebody comes with lots of, ornamentals that look like the Hyatt, we can guide them toward native species.
Yeah, I think you don't have to be an expert in these. If it's in the bylaw in this way, then you can say, demonstrate please how you're using water efficient plantings or capturing stormwater, and they can simply provide narratives and other ways of demonstrating that they've met the requirement, just as they would with any other technical requirement.
One way is
It would be nice, Laura, if you're on the board for the rest of your lifetime.
Well, also, this,
Yeah, a
We
few
can
other
add that
changes
in.
come along with me.
we can say landscape shall be reviewed by Laura Tenney.
so this
Only if
can be,
Mary's going to commit to reading everything for us.
seriously,
No,
though, this can be turned into sort of a manual you hand out to applicants for special permits, so they know what to design to.
Laura, this is
Mary,
really
what-
good. Thanks for doing this.
I think
Thank
this,
you, Mary.
okay. So I'm
All right,
gonna,
I'm gonna stop
sir.
sharing.
okay,
Do you want that back? The screen share?
yeah, I got it, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so purpose is gonna be new. Sorry, where did the landscape go? Sorry, making you sick here. Nope, purpose. Okay, and then other changes. Are you proposing leaving these more prescriptive things for the moment?
Yeah, I really felt the most impactful thing was to get it up in the purpose. I
Okay.
didn't thought or I
right.
didn't take the time to really thread the needle and all the rest of it at this point.
I think
it's
then that we have
town
this,
meeting.
we can sort of modify, we leave ourselves the opportunity to modify this.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's water, wastewater, underground, fire alarm. And do we have stormwater still in here? Because that was in, hopefully.
I thought I just saw it go by.
We just need to check that stormwater. I'm just gonna put it.
So there
Right.
should not be any references to stormwater?
No,
when we-
it should be referenced
You should
to
reference the bylaw.
the bylaw.
General bylaw, okay.
Yep, I'm gonna put a comment here. Okay. And that's not where it goes. I just did it as a placeholder.
Okay.
Okay. Fiscal analysis. This exists in the current bylaw, right?
Not in so many words, but yes.
I don't know how you do this, but
Sarah, does this mean that the planning board would hire a peer review
Yes,
fiscal analysis?
yes.
it could. I think it depends on don't you think it depends a little bit on the,
Sure, on the size of it, absolutely.
So
Can we
maybe,
require that as a condition of the development? I mean, that they submit the fiscal analysis and we simply peer review it? Sorry, Mary, I didn't mean to
that
interrupt.
could be one way to do it, right? Well, the applicant should provide the analysis of the cost of the development. The applicant shall identify the order of magnitude estimates, which for fire, police, and then the planning board is conducting the analysis based on whether or not. I mean, these are inputs, right?
so I don't
Wouldn't that-
think a planning board has the financial expertise to do the analysis, so maybe it can be
How about-
stated in there that it is a peer review when needed.
Okay.
Mhm. Or FinCom could,
That's true with all of these provisions, actually, but it wouldn't hurt to put it in here.
Right. Planners. So can I put in,
I think what you want to say is the planning board shall require a fiscal analysis of the
Yeah.
proposed development. Because it is the applicant that does it, and then the town has the right to peer review it.
Yeah,
and that peer review is elsewhere.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm just making a note, make sure peer review applies here. Okay, so we'll cross-reference to make sure that the peer review does apply to this. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
waiver-
and then there was just a typo in that paragraph.
There are many.
Yeah, no, I will agree to that, but I just saw it right now. So it says the long-term benefit and cost to shall maintain. So you got to get rid of one of
Get rid-
those words.
Get rid of shall,
To the town.
get rid of shall,
Thank you.
cost to maintain a positive net fiscal position.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. So it says we can waive them. And that we have enforcement with a performance standard with peer review. Do we allow a performance bond?
Yes,
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So this is additional performance standards for the LCD.
But why do we need additional performance standards when we're requiring all this stuff anyway?
I think that's a good question. I think we didn't have it previously, so we needed it, but now I think we've got it covered.
So what's in
Unless you
here?
can find something there that isn't.
Other design and operating guidelines.
So it's in the water resource district, so they're going to be, all this is going to apply anyway.
So you're saying this is redundant,
Yes, I think it's all redundant.
okay? And it's just this section. I'm gonna just make that smaller, so,
Yeah, it's not a big section.
yeah, it's drainage runoff.
Why don't we talk about it when you get here? But yeah, sure.
Yep, Gary, you're on.
Mhm.
Go mute yourself.
Okay. Oh, no, that's in comment, sorry. Okay, so topographical changes, Chris.
Okay, so we have gone through a major rewrite here because the existing topographical changes in site grading is complicated and prescriptive and vague and complicated. Yeah, I guess I said that's all. And it's complicated. So we just tried to simplify it and make it performance based. And instead of trying to talk about interior lots and exterior lots, just make it all the same for the entire lot.
Mhm. Okay, and I agree, we did move, we actually, those are now in section 2. Both of those I checked. Earth was already there.
Good.
Oh, good. So we can take it out of here.
I checked. So I think that's fine. I was wondering why we are exempting driveways, parking areas, and utilities for septic systems. If our purpose is to ensure the natural contours of the land not excessively be altered, driveways can be a pretty big piece of that. And I don't know why we are exempting driveways, parking areas.
There are strong reasons
But
for
they're
that.
they're all required for housing. You can't build a house and not have a driveway or not have a septic system if it needs it. So I think
Right,
they're
but that doesn't mean
exempt.
you have to blast away the hillside to do that necessarily. I mean,
Well,
the
I
answer
think
is
I think if you don't allow these things, you're doing a prescriptive taking of the land. And so there'll be a lawsuit.
I don't see it as a taking, but, well, I'm sorry, Mary, you had your hand up. I didn't want to butt in. I'll just raise my hand.
Mary, go ahead.
So if Chris could explain, to me, this is a drastic change from what we currently have, and I'm not saying that what we currently have is great, but maybe if we can walk through some things. Currently, what our exempted activities are septic utilities and green activities and authorized structures. So our current definition of authorized structures residential dwelling and commercial structure?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And
I mean, I don't know what an authorized structure is. It's not defined anywhere in the current statute, so it's,
yeah, so I would just like some more clarity on that because, yeah, I guess just if we could, well, whatever. But so then this also removed, it says special permits for land clearing and site clearing was needed for excavation, filling and grading. But that was removed. So I don't know why that was removed. Now we're only saying it's required for the bullets that are listed below, and then the bullets that are listed below pretty drastically change from what we currently have. Like I had mentioned at last meeting that, the removal of 100 square feet of ledge versus what we currently have for the 20 feet in the setback and 100 in the interior. So I think we currently designate setback and interior because setback is getting closer to other people's houses. And so we want more of a buffer for that. And then the cubic yards of material was 100 and now 20. So, I mean, I guess how were these numbers calculated to change and why?
So the answer to part of your question, we tried to make the setback requirements more performance-based. Why would you worry about somebody removing 100 cubic or 10 cubic feet of earth from within the setback? And the answer is because it would affect drainage on your neighbor. That's the only thing it would really do. So what we say is, I guess if you go further down, it says that you can't change the grade within, where is it?
Within greater than 10 feet from pre-construction grade.
Well, no, there's something about the drainage within.
Oh, it probably says drainage. It made it up above, say, promote.
No, there's something about within 10 feet of it. Did we take that out, Laura? I can't remember.
Yeah, there was, yep, the drainage.
So I'm going to exercise my prerogative here. I don't understand here if we're exempting these.
Oh, there it
things.
is. Grade changes of 3 feet within 5 feet of the property.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But if we're exempting the driveway, and if we're exempting the commercial structure and we're exempting the primary residence or accessory structure, what else is there?
What's left? I know.
Well,
I think we should take out all those exemptions.
I
Because-
don't think you can.
I agree.
Sarah,
If you-
can I speak?
Wait a minute. Well, hold on.
Why, everyone else has
Okay.
spoken about this.
Okay, go ahead.
The idea of this, people need to step back a bit. The existing law is absolutely Byzantine, and nothing should be compared to it because there was never any logic put forward as to what the quantities were that were developed by John Newhall when he wrote it to begin with. And he presented it to the planning board. And literally, I was there at 11:45 p.m. and he did not tolerate discussion. Everybody was exhausted, and it was voted in 5 minutes.
I can understand how that happens.
You have to also keep in mind the average size lot in our town, if you add all the lots up, is a half-acre lot. To divide it up into perimeter areas and central areas, that's what you do when you're clear cutting hundreds of acres of land out west. You divide it up into areas like that. For half-acre lots and such, that sort of separation doesn't make much sense. The exemptions, the idea of this to begin with was not to encumber people from moving land around on their property. That's what people tend to want to do anyhow. The starting point was, yes, you can build your house and your driveway. So these exemptions should stay. You can build your house. The idea was you build your house, you build a driveway, you probably might want to put a swimming pool in, maybe a tennis court. But when you start to want to add a basketball court in addition, I don't think anybody wants to see you take down a whole cliffside that's 30 feet, 60 feet high, because some people in town do a lot of drilling and blasting to remove ledge. The idea was anything excessive beyond normal uses of residential properties should then be subject to some review. It was not to encumber people if they move a small amount of dirt or a small amount, or not small, medium-sized amount of dirt or ledge or what have you, because people, they bought their land. They might want to manipulate it in some ways, and it's fairly normal. So that's my blurb on it. So some basic exemptions need to exist here so people could do normal things. It's when they're starting to do more and more and more where the town should maybe weigh in.
Okay, Sue.
Thanks. I think I was gonna say that I think the original intent was for excessive manipulation of the land beyond the driveway, the house, and the utilities. It was really to keep people from, doing more than is needed for general use. So I don't need to say more.
Gary, do you have another comment? I have a comment too.
I lowered my hand.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I didn't? Oh, sorry.
So I'd just like to actually suggest another way of looking at this. And that in this, despite, I'm not, without arguing the merits of what you've just said, Gary, I'm getting to the point right now in my own head, at least, I think that the changes that have been proposed to section 6 are great. I think that this topic could torpedo the effort to clean up section 6. Because people, for whatever reason, whether it was 11 o'clock at night or some other reason, it will be a hot topic that could torpedo this section at town meeting.
Sarah, there was never any advocates for this law, though. No one ever spoke up advocating strongly for this
So
law.
let me just finish, Gary. And you may well be right historically, but I think people are wary of change. And this one feels, Riley, to me, that it's a change that could torpedo all the other good things that are in this section. So
So Sarah, one thing, these exemptions currently exist.
I know,
The default is.
no, they
allowing them-
don't quite exist like this, though.
They do, actually. I talked
Could I
about
make a suggestion?
authorized
But there-
structure.
Yeah, but there's also, there are some additional requirements for the residential accessory.
Well, they have an interior lot,
Yes.
special permit and exterior, there's this.
There's a
crazy differentiation.
convoluted, I'm not disagreeing, I'm not arguing the merits of of this alternative or the shortcomings of the existing, or arguing that there aren't shortcomings in the existing. I'm now talking strategy for getting this thing through a town meeting.
May I
Yep.
make a suggestion?
Yeah, Laura, go ahead.
I think the best part of what we've written so far, my own personal view, is the purpose under 6.4.1, the ABCD. Those are the
Yeah.
intent and the character we're getting after. I agree that, everything under 6.4, we can, argue about what's the right amount of cubic feet or what's the right metrics to use, whether we should do any grading in the site, in the setback, and perhaps if we just change the purpose and leave the rest of it as is, bad as it is right now, perhaps that shows an intent that we're coming back for this, but right now what we're trying to do is make our purpose clear. Would that be acceptable?
That would be very acceptable to me. The other option, sorry, I know I see other hands up. The other option will be to propose this and see if we get pushback on it in the public hearing,
Hmm.
and see if we,
I think you're right that it's it could be really problematic, and we have bigger fish to fry right now, perhaps, than
yeah, that's my
this
concern.
one.
Mary?
I like Laura's idea. I think that the intent of this original bylaw is to, obviously people can do what they want with their property, but it's also to ensure the integrity of the neighborhood and the town and the abutters and all that. And so if you start messing too much with these allowances of cubic feet and all that, I do think it's a bit dicey. And I agree with Chris. I mean, all of these uses are in our current bylaws, the authorized structures, I guess, which would be houses and commercial drives activities, which is a weird reference, I guess, for driveways. So yeah, I like Laura's suggestion.
All right, Gary, it's getting late. And we're almost done with this, I think. Gary, did you have another comment?
Sorry, I just disagree with you, Sarah, that we shouldn't, on any of these laws, we shouldn't worry too much about This one could 616 could upset the apple cart for 6.0 up to 615. That's potentially true for everything we're doing. If someone says, let's 616, let's hold it, or let's freeze it and keep it in place, that's easy enough to do. It doesn't, I'm not fearful of that. I think Laura suggested bring it to the public hearing, and let's, as a board, we'll be voting in the end anyhow afterwards.
All right, I'll take them. Let's just, I think we've, are there anything new to add to that discussion?
No, I move that we take this language as proposed to the
Okay.
public hearing, but be prepared to retreat to Laura's suggestion
Okay.
if we get pushback.
So I'm going to take a motion to advance section 6 as discussed tonight with the changes and with the review authorized previously to the public hearing with a update, a new version if possible, for our next meeting on Monday, if possible. So Sharon, you get that? A motion to advance section 6 as discussed tonight and with the review by Chris and Laura as voted previously tonight with an update, at least verbally, at our next meeting.
You're talking about the whole section 6?
Yes, I am. The
The
whole section,
whole enchilada?
the whole enchilada, which is basically what
Well,
we've been looking at.
what about what Chris just proposed on this, taking this to
Well,
public
that's the
hearing?
same thing. It's the
That's the
same
same
thing.
Okay, you were talking about the
With
whole
the
thing. Okay.
topographic changes included, proposed topographic changes section included.
She encompassed my motion.
Okay, so,
I'll second that motion.
okay, I guess I made the motion. Not supposed to. Okay, any other discussion? Laura, you have your hand up?
Yeah, there's one grammatical thing in an earlier paragraph that's been bothering me, but if Chris and I are deputized, I can clean that up later. Not bother
Great,
everybody.
thank you. All right, any other discussion? You are deputized. All in, Ron? Section 6? Ron? He's still figuring it out. Laura?
Yeah, my screen's freezing. Hope you can hear me. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for
Chris?
me.
Okay, Laura, yes. Gary?
Yes.
Yes.
Laura, Mary?
No,
Anybody else? I vote yes. Okay. All right. Great work. A couple other things here.
Can you put up the schedule for a minute?
Yeah, I'm going to, I have a couple more things here on my presentation. As I went through things in draft 8 was this in section 4 of draft 8 was a prohibition of boats and commercial vehicles in the side setback. We talked about it and said, oh, it should only be within 5 feet of the side property line. But it does not exist in any of our existing zoning. And I'm just trying to figure out if, and we included it in our general bylaws recommendation. But very quickly, does anybody have, I also searched the minutes for a long time ago to see if where this thing came from. I'm just wondering if anybody has any, who was here before, has any recollection about why it was suggested in the draft 8 bylaws. Because it's a little Byzantine.
I don't know. I suspect this is a solution in look of a problem which doesn't really exist.
I,
Do you
This-
remember, Mary?
I believe it was in Mark Bobrowski's draft, and I know we talked about the boats and commercial vehicles extensively. And at that time, it was voted to, I'm assuming this is with the parking, right? The parking of these?
Yes, parking and the side.
Storing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So it was voted to keep it in, so I don't know when it was taken out.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is that if we move it to the general bylaws, we have to delete it from zoning, which is why I went looking for it in our current zoning. So we'll let that sit right now. We don't actually have to have a public hearing on general bylaws. And if the board of, we can have a conversation with the Board of Selectmen about whether they think that's important. I think there was broad agreement last time we talked about this, that it belonged in the, if we were going to regulate where I parked my boat or you parked your boat, it should be in the general bylaws, not in zoning. And Mark Bobrowski agreed. But we do not need to remove it. You know, anytime we move something to the general bylaws, you have to, like junk cars, you have to delete the appropriate section out of zoning, which is, so we don't have to do that. Because it's not in our zoning unless somebody can find it. And I cannot. So, okay, thank you. The other thing is, I'd like a motion to authorize Chris and me to figure out some place where we should insert language in the motions to authorize the town clerk and the planning board to make non-substantive ministerial revisions to ensure that these changes reflect the correct section referencing, numbering, and to correct typographical errors. So I'm asking for a motion to authorize Chris and me to find the right place to insert this in a motion for town meeting.
Are you saying to give,
I'm only trying to figure out where to just say, it may be that we have to have a separate article to do this, but, or maybe it may be that we have to have it in every article that we move forward at town meeting for these changes, but that we insert this language in. Now I'm starting to write motions or articles that would appear on the town meeting warrant, and I want to put this language appropriately in the right sections. And maybe it's in every section, I don't know.
no, my question is, are you proposing this as a bylaw that the town clerk, I'm not clear on what this is.
No, I'm saying the article on town meeting floor would be to strike sections 1 through 4 and insert the following sections 1 through 4 and to authorize the town clerk, blah, blah, blah. So probably every motion that where we're striking large sections would have this added in. I need to figure out how to do it. I don't know how to do it. So rather than us all figuring it out, I'd like us to just be okay to have us figure out where we stick this thing administratively.
It's just formatting. It's allowing us to format
Right.
them.
So do we have agreement that we can figure that out? I don't know.
I make a motion that we be authorized.
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
Second, Chris.
second it.
The
I'll
second.
second it.
Any other discussion? Chris,
Yes,
Laura,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Ron? I think all right. Ron, he's frozen again.
My screen is freezing, but I hope you can hear me. Yes.
Okay, Mary,
Yes,
okay. And timeline, okay, I vote yes as well. Timeline, here's our timeline. Last time when we had our non-meeting meeting, we did talk about having a second hearing here on the 23rd. In order to do that, we need to post a public notice for that hearing by tomorrow. So I'm going to suggest that we actually not do that and we try to do everything at the 17th and 18th. And then we may revise what we put to town meeting and that we not do this. So unless there's an objection, I think we strike this hearing on the 23rd. Any objections? Or does everybody love public hearings so much? Okay, there we go. It's gone. Okay.
Also, I have something to
No.
say also about the article to the cricket.
Yeah, I have.
Oh, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Just before you get off the schedule, I'm getting some intel here from tonight's BOS meeting that the warrant for the planning board needs to be ready by 5/16. I don't know what that means.
That means it needs to be
Or-
before the public hearing.
Or
That means
wait
that
till
they
the
just
fall.
changed it, because I have it in writing from Greg. That was the 24th.
So that's what I'm hearing. So let's drill into that tomorrow, Sarah.
Okay, I mean, I have it in writing from Greg that it was the 24th. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
the problem too with that is that the ZBA accepts their permit applications on the 16th, which is why we held our hearing on the 17th. So it would be after their May applications were received.
So we'll drill it. We'll find out what that really means tomorrow, and you know.
To have another meeting on. Okay, so then the last thing I'd like to do is just authorize Sarah. There was a little bit of confusion last time, so authorize Sarah, Chris, and Sue to make these changes talked about tonight and other administrative changes, to prepare material for the public in advance of the public hearing, to prepare an article for the Cricket, to coordinate presentations for the public hearing, and take any other actions to support this effort. And I guess I will add, and to keep the board apprised. I think otherwise there still remains, I mean, I know it's all of the public documents say draft on them, and that took hours to get them in PDFs and have them with the word draft on them, so that it which is what was requested by the town clerk, for example. And then also to prepare an article for the Cricket, which is required. And I know Chris, you want to update us on that, but could I just get a motion to for this these changes, so that we don't have a fire drill on this, unless somebody wants to make a other proposal.
Well, Sarah, can you add to that it's these items are distributed to the planning board before, published in the Cricket or handed out, or that the planning board gets to see these?
Well, I think they are on SharePoint. They are on SharePoint. But yes, I've continued to do that.
No, but so like for the article for the Cricket, that we would see it as a planning board before it goes to the Cricket, or the handouts for the public hearing. Or
I don't think that's realistic. That's why I've made this motion. It's not realistic to have every single thing that goes out be reviewed by the group. That's my concern.
Sarah, I don't feel it's necessary, but I do feel the chair or co-chair should review it before it's published. That's all I care about.
Certainly can add that in.
If it's published ahead on SharePoint, I would welcome comments from the board, but again, with the short time frame, I agree with Sarah. We need to move on this. We can't be bogging ourselves down in process. It's becoming harder and harder to get this stuff done, and the timeline. We've had issues with links to webs to Zoom, and we're behind now a week.
And now
We got to trust ourselves a little bit.
Well,
I think
my point was that, it's hard to say things are coming from the planning board if the planning board doesn't really know if all members of the planning board don't know what they are. And agreed, I mean, we're trying to do things in a time crunch, which is not an ideal way to do things.
Well, I would hope anything that's published is not something new to the planning board. It was something that was discussed and vetted. I would hope anybody writing an article would not be introducing something that the planning board is not aware of.
So can I say
Yeah, why don't you
something?
update on the Cricket?
So I actually wrote an article for the Cricket to be published this week. It's not from the planning board, it's from me. And it's about the history of zoning. It's not about what we're proposing to do. I would like to continue a series of articles, and in fact, I would really like it if other people would write some of them about specific topics having to do with the zoning changes. This was just a background piece, and because we are running out of dates when the cricket's going to be published, I just went ahead and sent it in and said it's for me personally. So I just want everyone to be aware of that. If anyone would like to see it before it's published, I'd be happy to share it.
Thank you, Chris, for doing that. I think also one of the challenges is that the time, there's a lot of lag. You know, the cricket, it has a 4-day time. You know, Tuesday is the date, and we meet on Mondays, and it's also hard. I get comments on things, and you know, then it's up. For example, the other things we've written, you get comments, and you have to make a decision about whose comments to take. So we do the best we can, I think, and I do think it's stronger for advancing these changes if we have it come from the planning board, rather than, not to diminish your effort, Chris, in any way.
Oh, I agree.
That's why I proposed this this motion, and I have tried extremely hard to be very forthright about the changes we've made. So I don't think we've tried to sneak things through or do them with malintent. So
That gets you nothing.
if somebody has a better proposal than what I've done here, then, you know, we could post a lot of meetings between now and a week to review things. That's sort of the alternative, I think. Because we have to prepare materials for the public hearing, which is in 2 weeks. And it's virtually impossible, at least from my schedule, to get them done on Thursday for a Monday meeting.
You want to hear so moved?
Yes.
Yes.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Gary, I'll take a vote. Gary? Or any
Yes.
other discussion? Yeah, okay. First of all, any other discussion? Okay, Gary has voted yes. Laura?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes,
Ron?
I'm
Yes.
Mary?
gonna vote no, just because it's not that I don't trust anybody. I think it's a bad process.
And I'll vote yes. And well, thank you for that. And I would like to just say that it does take courage, Mary, to vote no. So I appreciate your willingness to exert your voice. Okay, that's all I have on my agenda for tonight. Where the minutes were posted only this morning, and I'm not prepared to review them. That was on the agenda for tonight, unless somebody else is ready to have. I think they have some. I will have some comments on them, but I haven't had a chance to enter those comments anywhere. Speaking for myself, I don't know what, Ron, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, so for our next meeting, we'll probably be talking regarding that A&R, which we received comments from town council on. Sue, I would assume we're having another planner's report for next week. For the month of
I
May.
didn't see that on the agenda, but I can prepare that.
Well, I'm thinking of that. Okay, some minutes to approve, and then Sarah, if you can give me the bylaws, we want to, I don't know, 6.4, anything we want to discuss that we think we can fit in next week, I will get that on the agenda. And hopefully we won't be here for 3 hours.
Okay,
Any other comments from the board? Otherwise, I'll move to
Laura
adjourn.
has her hand up.
Laura, sorry.
Yeah, it's quick. For whatever meeting minutes we're reviewing next week, could we just have the list of those dates? Because I'm pretty foggy on what we have and haven't passed. Thank you.
Yeah, we need to do that. I need to fill that table. Okay. All right,
I
Sharon, you got
move
everything?
we adjourn.
Mhm.
Okay,
I do.
second,
Second,
okay. Anybody not move? Otherwise, we'll adjourn. I'll take a roll call. Okay, see you next week.
Okay, thank
Right,
you.
thank
Okay,
you.
thank you all.
Thank you,
Bye.
Sarah. Thanks, guys.